good morning, everybody. How is everyone? Good? Yeah? Well, first off, I just want to say thank you to the Miami Club. I've not been here. I've actually not been on the 16th floor here, so the view of Miami is unbelievable. I live pretty close to here. I moved to Miami about 3.5 years ago, and it's a beautiful place. I'm honored to be here with so many distinguished guests here. We've had a number of conversations over the last 6 months or so, and we're going to talk a little bit about what makes Miami great, what makes Florida great, and there's aviation and the aerospace industry that is a big part of that. I want to touch a little bit on the last panel talked about a tech hub. I actually believe that Miami is a national security hub for the United States of America, and I believe that Florida has a lot of assets and Miami has a lot of assets that we can actually leverage. And so it's great to have a number of people on here. We actually have a great mix here. We've got university systems, we've got the private industry and private capital, and then we've got the government. And in order for us to make this work properly, we've all got to work together in a great fashion. So I want to open it up, and I want to talk a little bit about infrastructure, and building talent. I know each one of you is working on a number of different programs for the universities and for the private sector and for the government and stuff. And I wanted to talk a little bit about what you're doing. So I'll start with the hometown here with Provost Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler, and good morning, everyone. And let me add my welcome to each and every one of you to Miami-Dade College. I'm Malou Harrison, as I was introduced, Provost here at Miami-Dade College. So, from the panel that just took place, when we heard some of the narratives around Miami for all, it really hit home for me because Miami-Dade College has been the community's college for 65 years. And in those 65 years, and the topic, Tyler, is aviation and aerospace, in 1961, Miami-Dade College pioneered education in aviation. And for 65 years, we have continued to progress and really transform the work we do in concert with industry to ensure that talent pipeline is flourishing to support industry. And so when we look at aviation and aerospace, traditionally in Miami, it's been really about services, right? Freight, logistics, MROs, and not that much of aerospace and manufacturing. But we know that we have that opportunity now because through the commercialization of aerospace, we find that we, meaning Miami-Dade College, needs to really amplify its training, really needs to advance the training that it has already put in place in terms of aviation. So our footprint for aviation and aerospace really has taken a really different direction. And we've just launched the Florida Center for Aviation and Aerospace at Miami-Dade College. And so what that has done is to really unify aerospace, the emerging aerospace with aviation, and to really do that in a strategic way so that we're under one ecosystem. And that really allows us to bridge training, technical training, with industry needs. How can we better respond to the industry? So with infrastructure locations at 2 of our campuses, the Homestead campus, the North campus, and at 3 airports, MEA, MIA, that's Miami Executive Airport, MIA, and at Opa-locka, Miami-Dade College truly has its footprint of education and training in all aspects of aviation and aerospace. There will be a new aerospace technician program coming on board this year, and many MROs have asked for that. And lastly, there will be a new program coming on board in terms of aviation maintenance, and that leads to A&P, which is the airframe and power plant certification. So a real comprehensive, battery of programs, and really working in hand with industry at Miami-Dade College.
That's great. Those are awesome programs. Thanks for putting those together and driving that. President Nuñez, I know you've had a lot of work, especially in the last week, at pulling a lot of university systems together. And you talked about workforce, you talked about talent. Can you share a little bit about FIU and the programs that you guys have for workforce development?
Well, good morning, Tyler. Thank you so much. And I'm just going to give Tyler a quick shout out because, yes, last week I had a summit in which I brought university presidents from across the country. So we had the Ohio State, we had University of Omaha, we had Marymount in Virginia, we had Montclair from New Jersey. So a great representation of universities from across the country. And of course, as you're putting a panel like this together, there's always something that goes wrong. And one of my panelists did not show up. And so here I am in a panic. And all of a sudden, in walks Tyler, willing to step in, did a great job. So thank you, Tyler, for rescuing me.
Thank you.
But really, that was the theme of the conference. It was to understand how collaboration needs to take place. And so there's really three things. And really dovetailing on what Provost was talking about is how do you collaborate? How do you bring all of the component parts together? And so there's three things. You need, of course, talent, and that's the talent that we see in our respective university and college. And just by show of hands, there's a few students here. So I'd like to see the students. There's a couple over here. Great students I just met and telling me all the wonderful things they're doing in engineering. So you need talent. And in order to develop that talent, you need to recruit faculty. You need good programs. And so we're really proud at FIU what we're doing. But then you also need those industry partnerships. What we're doing is really mapping our academic programs and offerings to what industry needs are, because it does us no good as academics to insist upon what the curriculum should be if it doesn't make sense for the private sector. So that's been a concerted effort. And then research. For us at FIU, we're a major R1 research university. We've doubled our research in record time. We're looking to double it again within the next 5 years. And a lot of that research is focused on these important industries, aerospace being one of those. FIU is proud to be part of the Florida Space Research Consortium. So you have universities like FIU, UCF, UF, Embry-Riddle coming together to advance technologies and research. We have our Transforming Antennas Center at our engineering campus, reconfigurable, stackable antennas, next generation antennas. We have our Credo Center, which does interesting, really cutting edge research on 2D, optoelectronics, small sats, CubeSats, you name it. So a lot going on the research front. And then again, I can't stress enough the importance of bringing industry to the table, working alongside what that future skill, that skill gap that exists, that we want to make sure we eradicate and eliminate by the programs that we're embedding at FIU and, of course, working alongside the college.
Excellent. Great stuff. Commissioner Gonzalez, I know you're working on a bunch of things in the district. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing for workforce development and maybe talk a little bit about the spaceport designation and what that means for you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Tyler. And, I think all of that ties in not only to this discussion, but I was listening attentively to the last discussion and the last panel that came up here. And I noticed that what kept coming up was the word affordability. And so when you talk about affordability, you can't talk about affordability without talking about opportunity. You need to create an access for opportunity if you want to dominate a market. As a government official, why would I even go there, right? Miami-Dade County right now is the center of the universe. We are the new New York, we're the new Dubai, we're the new Chicago. We are literally the center of the universe. Now, the issue here is that for many years, what has happened is you've had certain folks that are in charge that they don't think 30 years ahead. They think election to election to election. Raise your hand if you knew that Howard Hughes used to live in Miami International Airport. I mean, Howard Hughes revolutionized aviation. We used to be a leader in aerospace and in aviation. And we let Atlanta take our lunch money. How did that happen? Let's talk about how something like Silicon Valley comes to fruition. Silicon Valley doesn't come to fruition because there's nice weather and nice garages. Silicon Valley comes into fruition because of the academic opportunities that exist around there. You had the right people at the right time having the right conversations. That is exactly what President Nuñez is talking about. But it's not enough to just get folks at the college level. You need to get folks interested in what the next Silicon Valley is at the kindergarten level, at the middle school level, and at the high school level. So what are we doing in Miami-Dade County? What we're doing in Miami-Dade County is we are trying to work with Miami-Dade County Public Schools, Miami-Dade College, programs like Barrington Irving's BITS program in order to give young people the opportunity to understand aviation and get into aviation. Why? Because these skills are easily transferable into what the next tech boom will be. I don't have to tell you folks, but space technology is the future of humankind. We're never going to leave the information age. The information age will always continue to guide us, but space technology is going to change everything in the next couple of years. And I'm talking about defense. I'm also talking about the private sector. I'll give you a perfect example. In my district, I have just toured a small little warehouse. This small little warehouse is a satellite manufacturing company. Now, the owner of the warehouse went to Florida Christian, graduated from FIU. Every single student in that company went to Florida International University or is in Florida International University right now. But what struck me is I talked to this young gentleman. To me, he's a kid, right? 22 years old. That's a kid to me. This kid is telling me that he's working on these small little batteries, right? And these small batteries, they last 10, 20, 30 years without having to be recharged. They got this huge contract from the government in order to develop this technology. But not only are they using these batteries to put them on satellites, they also have a contract with Baskin Palmer using these batteries to cure blindness. Are you seeing what I see? This is the future of technology. It's all going to derive from what the space boom is going to bring. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Raise your hand if you absolutely love tariffs. It doesn't matter what you think about tariffs. Here's what matters. If you listened to the State of the Union, tariffs are not going to go away. But what is going to happen? You know what's going to happen? We're going to bring more manufacturing to the United States. Are we going to make Nikes? I am a Jordan fan. I wish that we would, but we're probably not. Here's what we are going to do. We are going to bring more defense manufacturing to the United States. Here's what I would like to see. I would like to see defense manufacturing, aerospace manufacturing, space manufacturing all throughout Miami-Dade County. Why? Because we already have the talent pool that is ready, willing, and able to work in that field. If you don't believe me, have you heard of George T. Baker? Raise your hand if you've heard of George T. Baker. One person. I went to George T. Baker. I graduated from George T. Baker. My mom literally put me in George T. Baker to keep me out of trouble. I had no intention of going into aviation. But here's what I learned at George T. Baker. You go in 9th grade, you graduate 12th grade, and you are an airframe and power plant mechanic. Now, for those that don't know, if you're in the aerospace industry, airframe and power plant mechanics are hard to come by. George T. Baker is pumping them out by the hundreds. Miami-Dade College is pumping them out by the hundreds, and they are leaving because there's not enough to go around. So what are we doing in Miami Executive Airport? We are building a second George T. Baker campus at Miami Executive Airport. We are also working with Miami-Dade College. Guys, if you haven't been to Miami-Dade College campus at Miami Executive Airport, I challenge you to go there. They have flight simulators that are training high school kids to be pilots. Did you know you can get a pilot's license by the time you're 17 years old? Do you know what type of skills you need in order to operate drones? Do you know what type of skills you need in order to manufacture satellites, manufacture spacecraft? All of these skills are easily transferable. So if you create the education hub, I'm talking kindergarten to high school, and you partner with brilliant heads of colleges like these two, what will happen is you will dominate the next frontier of technology, because these companies, not only do they want to come to Miami, most of the CEOs already live here. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with folks that are telling me, man, listen, I love Miami. My plane is literally at Miami Executive Airport, or it's already parked at Opalaca. I want to figure out what I can do, but there's no land. I'm sorry, I know I'm being long-winded.
It's okay. We got a little bit of time.
There's no land, right? There's nowhere to build. I don't know if you guys were listening to the last panel, but one of the things they were talking about is traffic. Raise your hand if you love traffic. Well, a little bit more than tariffs, I guess. The reason that we have traffic, and if you listen to the last folks that were up here, is because everybody lives on one side of the island and everybody works on the other side of the island. So every single day you have cars going one way and going the other way. I promise you there's a point. Miami Executive Airport is in the southwest region of Miami-Dade County. You know what is directly behind Miami Executive Airport? There's about 2,000 acres of what you call urban expansion area. Now, this is where you build, if you were to build, where you don't push over the urban development boundary. I can't tell you how many developers, and if there's any developers in the room, I'm talking to you. I can't tell you how many developers there are that would love to see apartment buildings and houses go out there. We can't do that. I understand there's an affordability crisis. I understand that we need housing. But you cannot just put homes in places without planning. The difference between Miami and other major metropolitan areas is that you plan the regions. You have nodes. You go to Boston, you go to Chicago, you go to New York, you get on a train. Guess what? Anywhere that you get out, there are places where you can live, work, and play. That is not so in Miami-Dade. Folks live in one side, work and play on the other side. If I want to get an ice cream with my kids on a Friday, I live in West Kendall. I have to get in my car, and I'm going to be in my car for about 32 minutes just so we can get an ice cream and then go back home. However, if you're in Doral or Coral Gables, it's very different. So what am I talking about? What I'm talking about is those 2,000 acres of UEA. What needs to go there is not apartment buildings. What we need is to bring major manufacturing and defense companies out there to give graduates from FIU, graduates from Miami-Dade College, and young kids graduating from George T. Baker with zero student loan debts real jobs, real opportunity. You want to solve the affordability crisis, one, both so that property taxes are slashed, but two, make sure that we create opportunity for young people.
Great. So that's a good segue into the private sector. So we've got universities, we've got government, and now we've got the private sector, which is a key piece to that.
You can hear me?
Hopefully, I can hear you, Charles. So tell us, you've been doing this for a while.
That's a tough act to follow, there, Commissioner.
You can do it. I know you can do it.
Thank you.
Let's talk about space.
Sure. No, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for inviting me to this event. This is exciting for me, and thank you for everybody here in the Economic Club. I'm Charles, also known as Chuck Beams, longtime space and intelligence guy. I was in the Air Force, retired, and then I've been in the private sector in various ways. And for the last 10 years, 15 years, I'm an investor / operator. What I specifically do is I identify early stage companies where it's still run by the founder CEO, and they're looking for that partner, frankly, to take the company to the next level. And I invest. I don't raise funds. I use my own. I've been fortunate to have. I worked for Paul Allen many years ago, and I was fortunate enough to sort of develop my own sort of fund, if you will. And so I partner with folks, and then I help take those companies from, anywhere between say 10 to 20 people to, well, we just IPO'd York a couple weeks ago, right? So that was a big deal. Very proud of that. That Dirk and I started that. It was just the two of us in a rented Regis office space, desks facing each other, old school newsroom style, and we just IPO'd on the New York Stock Exchange about a month ago. $4.5 billion. So, but I tell that story. This is not about me. What I want to do is talk about, because the commissioner mentioned to me, education is a big thing, and I'll just tell you one little story about how important the educational system is. For example, to York, we were just a small company. This was 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and necessity is the mother of invention. We were looking for a place to move. We had more employees than just myself and Dirk. We were looking around for different opportunities. And there's a local minority serving institution called Metro State University in Denver. Great school, very much more regional focused. It has an engineering program, but it's very applied. And they were excited to offer us the opportunity to move onto the campus, right? And work closely as they develop their aerospace engineering department into something that's more, Madam President, as you suggested, that would serve what the actual industry needs, rather than just, sort of, nothing against CU Boulder, but they're very much the sort of ivory tower kind of engineering school. And so we did that. And I'll tell you, that was one of the keys to York's success today, was that partnership with MSU Denver, because and MSU Denver itself, they also benefited from this because we grew up together. And I want to tell that story because I've been blessed with many successes in my life and all that kind of thing. And the last panel was a lot about money and big names and all this kind of stuff, and name dropping, Palantir, whatever. But I will tell you that what matters is people. It's the Economic Club of Miami. The economy is the measure of products and services, right? That's done by people. Those people have to have skills, and they have to have opportunity. And that, in my opinion, is what the Economic Club ought to be focused on. Private capital will flow where the opportunity is best. That's the way it works. And it works best when the conditions are right for the local economy, the local government. There isn't corruption, there isn't all that kind of stuff. There isn't graft or whatever. And there's a school system, there's an educational system that is a pipeline, and that takes time. There's a now infamous story of a school in Pasadena, California, that it's the equivalent of sort of folks in this room got together, and I think in the early 1920s, and they said, we're going to take this community college, and it was just a bold people, and said, we're going to make it a world-class engineering institution. And they built it brick by brick, recruited, great weather out there, obviously, recruited a couple of key professors, brought them to the university. And over 100 years later, it's Caltech, right? It's the premier school, and that combined with Howard Hughes, because Howard Hughes also revolutionized the space business, communications, satellites, and all that. But that's how it begins, and it requires sustained commitment from the political and education leadership to make it happen. And so, I pledge to the commissioner. I live in South Beach, and I'll confess to you, I live here because it's a great place to live. But I've been here a while now, and I see the opportunity, and I've talked to the commissioner about what I can do to help actually realize the sort of the vision that I just talked about. I put together a paper, a vision paper. I've actually shared it with a friend of mine, actually she's at Citadel, just because she's very smart, Joanna Welsh. And I call it, my vision is called Space Valley. Forget about Silicon Valley. Miami needs to think of itself from a space perspective, all aspects, education, entrepreneurism, because that's how you raise wages, right? And that's the real, as the gentleman from St. Louis said, that's how you actually really solve the affordability thing, is you get better paying jobs for everybody, and that comes from education. So anyway.
Great.
Tyler, if I could respond to the commissioner and to our other colleague as you talk about Miami. And we're now at the Economic Club of Miami Economic Forum. One point that we all need to understand is that we have about 54% of residents in Miami-Dade County who are asset limited, who are income constrained, and they're employed. And the acronym ALICE, right? Asset limited, income constrained, employed. 54% of our residents are living as ALICE designated. And what that means is they're living below the poverty thresholds, or they're struggling to make ends meet because they are employed. And so when you speak about that pipeline, that talent pipeline from kindergarten all the way to or 4-year and above institutions, it becomes very important. Dual enrollment. Both of our institutions have dual enrollment opportunities. And what that means is students that are in even as early as middle school can concurrently earn college credits by enrolling at our sister institution, FIU, and Miami-Dade College in areas like aviation and many, many others, right? The mobility of those certificates that students are able to earn, as well as degrees, takes them into the workforce and or into higher degrees. And it's so important, as was said before, to ensure that our programs and our curricula are aligned with business and industry. And what we've done at Miami-Dade College, and certainly I'm sure at FIU, is to ensure that we have advisory boards. And those advisory boards are made up and comprised of leaders like you. And we work with you, so you are in turn providing us with the information as to what should a Miami-Dade College graduate know so they can best serve your industry, right? And we continue in that mode so that all of our programs are not there for the sake of having degree programs, but certainly to supply the talent that industry needs.
Great. Let's shift a little bit to success. What does success mean? And I know all of y'all have metrics of some kind, and you look at those KPIs and stuff like that. What does that look like? Can you talk about FIU and President Nuñez and tell us how you're measuring things?
Yeah, absolutely. Success for us, really, we measure it currently. So the state of Florida actually has performance metrics for universities across the state of Florida. And those are things, of course, that you would all expect. Graduation rates, making sure we're graduating our students on time. Employability upon graduation. That's something that we are held accountable for in the state of Florida as a university. It's not just enough that we're going to give our students a great education. I have no doubt when they cross the graduation stage, they have had a great education. It's been academically rigorous and focused on excellence. And of course, transitioning into the workforce, they look at our students and they say, how many of your students are getting jobs? And it's not enough that they're getting jobs. There has to be a median threshold, which is $50,000 for an understanding in Miami-Dade County. $50,000 doesn't get you very far, but it is something that we're measured upon. So success for us really is making sure our students have a great academic experience, but then also it translates into the workforce. It translates into future educational opportunities. And so we also look at our graduate programs, our PhD programs. FIU really does have a great program around all areas of engineering. But we know it's not just engineering. And I know that the industry leaders here would tell us, yes, we need engineers, of course, but there's a lot of other industries, a lot of other skills that are required to really fulfill the needs of what aerospace industries are going to require. You know, I served in the legislature. I was elected in 2010, and I see here my colleague that came in with me, Jose Felix Diaz. And I think he would agree with me that when we would talk to industries or we would talk to businesses that were looking at Florida or South Florida, there was always a concern about the talent pipeline. I can tell you that no longer exists. And it's not just because I say it, because I'm president of a university, but I hear it day in and day out from CEOs, from people that are looking to move their businesses, not just because we have great weather here. If you look outside and you see the skyline, of course, great weather, great climate, great tax environment, but it's because they see the talent pipeline that exists today. And I think it's been a concerted effort of academia to get out of their ivory towers and to bring that focused curriculum to bear, but it has to be in alignment with industry. That's part of our strategic plan. It's one of our most important pillars as we move forward as a university, because we know our students and their families have a choice when they're selecting their educational future. And my goal and my success story is that they choose FIU and FIU first.
Love FIU. Okay, success. Other metrics on the industry side, it's a little bit different. How do you measure investment success and business success, and how does that tie into the government piece
Sure,
connections?
I can talk a little bit about it. I mean, there's the obvious metrics for a company, whether it's early stage or whatever, in terms of revenue numbers, earnings, if they're more mature, and that kind of a thing. But I guess, again, I'm going to go back to I like to think about things in terms of my personal experiences and what I experienced and share those with people. I talked a little bit about the state university in Denver that we partnered with, and advisory boards are good and they're important and they're useful, especially to advise the senior people of the university. But what I would suggest as another metric to consider is just the number of partnerships at the professor level, at the because that's actually where real magic happens. It's not always about being up on stage and talking about things. It's about at that level where you're affecting a single student, you change, all of a sudden you lift the veil of some student and they see what they can become. And that's incredibly magical. And I've seen it enough times that, and it happens at the level of engagement I'm on advisory boards for all kinds of things, far below that level. But if you want to look at think of it a metric, I don't know, nothing comes immediately to mind of how do you measure just the number of different businesses maybe that have like meaningful partnerships with professors or department heads or even just somebody that's developing a new curriculum for a particular thing. And then the other thing I always say I'm a longtime space guy, but we'll always have to manufacture satellites, and we're going to have rockets to launch these things. But from an investor standpoint, the big future is actually my little tagline when I give speeches to space audiences is that it's no longer rocket science, it's data science. The future of space very much is intersecting with the tech sector. And that's a key part of my vision for where I think Miami could really fit in. I'd love to move some of my companies to Denver for manufacturing, but that's a big commitment, and we'd have to look at the ROI on a movement like that. But when I think about like sort of growing the next generation of the next generation of sort of space talent, industry, revenue, jobs, great paying jobs, all that kind of stuff, it's very much in the sort of data science. So think AI, edge computing, cybersecurity, because everything's moving to space, low Earth orbit. Everything is. If you haven't noticed it yet, it's not just Starlink. Everything is going to be in another 10 years. There won't be as much. Anyway, I'll get off on that.
That's right. Commissioner, how about your success? How are you measuring success in the role that you're in on the government side? I know you've got programs, you've got connections, you want to grow the workforce and the development early years all the way up. What's your measurement in your mind that you can be successful? You look out 24 months from now.
Tyler, beyond popular opinion, I really believe that government success is extremely easy. You just have to care. And I think that the proof of that is the state of Florida. I think that if you go back to 2020 and you see what Ron DeSantis did in the state of Florida by creating an environment where not only business would thrive, but where opportunity would exist, and creating those momentums. I mean, President Nuñez, one of the things that I admire about her the most is that she's very humble, but she has led the charge with Space Florida to create the environment in Florida so that major space manufacturing and space companies want to come to Florida. In order to be a successful community, county, city, state, you need to create an environment where not only business can thrive, because if business thrives, business ignites the economy, business brings jobs, but you need to make the environment so that, as the provost was saying, the community can thrive. And while the provost was speaking, you really touched my heart, because look, you can't tell me what it takes to get out of the hood, because I got out. My mom cleaned houses for a living. My dad busted his butt in a warehouse every single day just to give me an opportunity, a shot at the American dream. I remember seeing my dad's hands, and he's got calluses that bleed, right? I remember that. And so my mom, to keep me out of trouble, because I went to Ruben Dario Middle School the year they beat up a kid so bad his eye came out of his socket. My mom, to keep me out of trouble, puts me in this program called George T. Baker, literally just to keep me out of trouble, because you had to go to George T. Baker in the morning, and then you would go to high school in the evening. And I didn't get a chance to hang out with certain people. But guess what? That created opportunity. That created a difference. So to me, it's not difficult. You just have to care. And I think Florida is proof of that. If you create an environment where businesses can thrive, where businesses can create jobs, and where the community can thrive and services are coming. I mean, you're talking, New York 98, 99, right? You can do that fairly easy. You just need people that care.
Great. So let's talk about the future. Next 12 months. What does that look like, and what do you think needs to be done in order for the national security and the aerospace industry and defense industry to be stronger than it is right now in Miami and in Florida? I'll open it up to...
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I think I alluded to it in my opening comments. It really is about talent. It's really about partnerships, and it's really about research. And I think if we're able to set aside our silos and to really break down some of those barriers that, I will be honest, universities and colleges, they kind of have this academic air of superiority that they know best. I think if you break that down and you bring, not in an advisory board, I always say I don't want to committee something to death. But if you bring people that are action oriented, that have that sense of urgency, because you're right, we don't have 12 months, I don't think. We are in a place where if we don't take advantage and really leverage the opportunity, we may miss out, because I guarantee you, as Chair of Space Florida, I deal with this all the time. Alabama is nipping at our heels, Colorado, California, you name it. There is a lot going on across the country with states that are they're throwing money at these private sector companies. They are throwing incentives. And so we don't do that here in Florida. We do something different. But Space Florida has really unique financing tools that they're able to leverage, and it actually ends up being a force multiplier for these companies. So I think if you don't focus on the talent development, if you don't make sure that you're mapping those programs to industry needs, if you don't focus on the research, things that are going to be critical for the future of our country, really, I think both Commissioner and Chuck were talking about how national security, it is all going to be space oriented. The next war, whatever it is, will be fought from space. The next generation of satellites, the next generation of data centers, AI, I mean, it is transforming industries as we speak. And if we sit around and talk about it and think about it and have a work group and do all those things, we will be left behind. So for me, it's about talent, it's about partnerships, and it's about research. And I hope, and I want to assure everyone that's in this room that FIU wants to be at the center of that.
Let's build.
I have one thought, and I'm the one person I think the provost, she may not be in the political realm either, but I think that
left that behind.
Oh, that's right. Well, and there's nothing against the political people. I'm a big proponent of great government, and the folks on stage are in that category. But I think that one of the things that I'll just be very candid, and this might be controversial, but one of the things that Miami does, I know this is quasi booster club here, but there is this reputation of Miami as being a fun place to visit. People come here for vacation. And let me tell you, national security space is serious business. It's the fate of nations today. It's like maritime was 150 years ago. And so I think one of the things that could be done, and I think it's at the city level, maybe the new mayor, I don't know any politicians except for the commissioner here. Having that as a key plank, actually, they don't have to be out there with marching bands and stuff, but having that as a key plank of their vision, that's where we're taking Miami, and and we understand the seriousness of it. It's not all about like where I live in South Beach, where it's just fun on the beach and all that, but this is an important component of our identity and where we want to take Miami in the future. I think that will go a long way to helping companies recruit people, because it again, serious business, as the president knows. because I am aware of your leadership in Space Florida, and that's a really important. We partner well with them, some of the industry groups that I lead. So thank you for that as well.
Next 12 months, Provost.
Next 12 months, I also agree with President Nuñez. Talent development. How can colleges and universities and other educational institutions be responsive in quick turnaround programs that align with what business and industry needs? There's competition out there. President, you spoke about that, from various states and so forth. How can we turn over programs quickly? Enhanced air traffic controller, the airframe and power plant programs, the aviation maintenance programs that so many of our MROs, again, want and need to be able to move their agendas forward. We need to be that supplier of talent, but can we do that with quality and in a very quick and responsive manner? I think that's what we need to focus on for the next 12 months, and then understanding what those skills need to be. And, you talk about semiconductor, you speak about welders that are needed in these industries. Construction trades have a huge part to play in the aviation and aerospace industry. And we need to look at those, I call them complementary programs that are going to be needed to lift up to support the industry.
Great. Commissioner, you want to take us home here?
Yeah. So I'm gonna agree. I'm gonna agree with Chuck. I'm gonna wholeheartedly agree with Chuck, and I can tell you that here's what's coming in the next 12 months. I keep saying that what you need in order to thrive in any community is you need to create an environment where businesses can thrive. So to Space Florida's credit, what we're going to be doing in Miami Executive Airport is we're going to be designating it as a spaceport. As a matter of fact, it just went through the Florida House through Majority Leader Soroy, and it's now going to the Senate. Now, why would you designate Miami Executive Airport as a spaceport? Don't worry, there will not be launches in West Kendall. We're not gonna launch rockets yet. But here's what we are gonna do. And anybody who's in aerospace right now, listen up. Space Florida has fantastic incentives for the private sector if you are in aerospace or you are in space technology. Sometimes up to a 50% reimbursement in an investment. And what happens when you designate a spaceport is that it creates a cone around the area. So Miami Executive Airport, those 2,000 acres of absolutely nothing that I'm telling you, all of that is now going to fall under the spaceport designation. Why? Because that is how we are going to be able to incentivize these big companies whose CEOs already live in South Beach with Chuck. That's how we're going to be able to incentivize them to build. More so, that is how we are going to find more of the funding necessary to keep creating these pipelines. If you talk to anybody who's in aerospace manufacturing, they will tell you that the biggest issue that they have is finding mechanics. Remember the satellite company that I told you about? Most of the folks that are working there, they used to be A&P mechanics, easily transferable skills.
Great. Well, we're out of time, so I do want to thank everybody here. I want to thank the panelists for being a part of this. I'm excited about what's in the future here, and the strength of Miami and the strength of Florida is big, and we definitely are leaning into it on the talent side, on the private sector side, and on the government. So thank you very much. Let's give it up for the panel.